Hello and welcome to an Everyday Canines video. In this episode on early takeoff syndrome, I want to talk to you about how it can affect turns, on jumps particularly, and what this may be happening and what's going on here. Now, this is not necessarily the case of every dog that has early takeoff, but I have certainly found with Sparrow over the years, she really struggles to do certain types of manoeuvres on jump. So for instance, I can do the infamous catch-go, which in some systems you're not allowed to do, which is where you turn your back on the jump and you send your dog with one arm and pick up the other, or you send him with one arm and you pick up. I can do that with Swift, no problem. Sparrow has always struggled with this. And I believe it's because Sparrow is so heavily based on my motion. When I'm doing that, she's looking at my body and my body's going the wrong way. So if I'm here, and I went to her, can you do check, check? Oh, good girl, because we're in a quiet environment. But if I come over here, I start to move, check, check, check. She did it. She's going to do it in training because she goes, I get this in training. It's a nice, quiet environment. But what can happen when we're in a competition and we're trying to do this at speed and we're doing that, she'll get there and she'll just stop and bark. Particularly if I just stop. Now she's doing that, lovely, but she will stop and bark at me, and what we can get in training, we can never get in competition. And I do believe it's a couple of factors, and I do believe it's a vision issue. We have similar things if we're going to do around the back, which is tight. So sometimes I come here and I'm going rap, 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 and she won't do that in competition. In training we get it because she's in a different environment, she's relaxed, this is her field, we're relaxed, we're doing these things more calmly. However, in a competition, it's a completely different story. Over the years, I've come to learn that if I come to a jump and I stop and ask her to do a manoeuvre, whether it be a wing wrap, round the back, or catch-go, then the odds are that Sparrow will stop and bark at me. Same goes when I try and do an in, she stops and barks at me. What I have to do instead is I have to keep a flowing motion. I have to basically draw the line completely with my body. So I have actually gone back to doing pivots with her. Instead of doing catch-goes and things like that, I do pivots. It's harder for me, and they're old school compared to catch-goes, but for her that makes a lot of difference. And if I do the pivots, she's far less likely to just stop and bark. So what I can't do is I can't come here and just stop and ask her to do it. I can in the field because I've got sausage in my hand. It's a different story. What I have to do is I have to keep flowing with her, keep that movement going the whole time. It's like I'm drawing a line that she's following, and I mustn't break that line. And yeah, that is frustrating when you're trying to get somewhere on a course and you can't get there, or you're doing really well but she gets to a jump and she starts to have an argument with me because she's decided that I've not moved quite right, I've moved jerkily or whatever, and she doesn't get what I'm saying. Is this a training issue or is it ETO? If it was a training issue, then I could overcome it with training, obviously. I have spent so long teaching the foundations for catch-goes, teaching the foundations for doing independent wing wraps. And as you can see in here in competition, she actually can do, in training, she can do them. But when we get into competition and everything's a bit more wild, the environment's different, she's not so sure of herself of where things are, then we lose it again. And so though I have tried and I've tried and I've tried, the training doesn't really correct her. And if I compare her to my other dogs and look at what they can do in the same manoeuvres, it's a different story. They can do what she can't do. And if it was a training problem as such, then they should be similarly, it should be similar. But they can do it, and it's just my lovely Sparrow. She's complex. The other thing I've noticed with Sparrow on turns is that she can't take a verbal and understand it on its own. It has to be in context. What do I mean by this? Okay, if I've got Swift here and I'm standing here, I can ask her to check, check, and she turns towards me, and I can ask her to loop, loop, which means turn left, and she can do it. If I change sides, I say loop, loop, check, she can still do it. She still knows that check means take the right, loop means take the left, even though I have changed my position. Sparrow cannot do that. Sparrow can do the loops and the checks as long as I'm on the correct side in her eyes. So if I want her to turn left, I would need to be on this side of her so she follows me, and she can. And if I want her to turn right, vice versa. But if I'm now here and ask for a loop, sometimes we might get it, sometimes we don't. And you can soon see if I start changing my position up, Swift will generally get more right, even though I'm changing position. Sparrow can't. So I have achieved rear crosses with Sparrow, but they are on unique words for her. And actually I'm now changing my system again, so that if I say away, away means turn away from me, and if I say this, it means turn towards me. Just make it really simple. So with Sparrow, everything has to be context based. I can't just have a word that means this, and this. It has to be context based. If I'm this side of you and I ask you to do this, that makes sense. But she can't generalize a word. She can't say, well, loop means turn left no matter where mother is. It's just one of those things. And after a long time of working through it and saying to myself, is it training? Is it this? I am now convinced, because she has so much trouble with directionals, that it is because of the ETO. It's just this, she's reliant so much on where I am, that trying to do things on the verbals, she just can't get it. So for instance, with a rear cross, I have to make sure I have a really strong arm motion. And if I do, most of the time we get it. Whereas with my other dogs, I could actually do that without having to have an arm motion. And it's just one of these little quirks that I've come across with her. And as long as you work with them, they actually don't impede us too much, but you have to be aware of them. And it is frustrating that there's some things we can do beautifully in training, but as soon as we get into that atmosphere of competition, where things are a little bit more heightened, Sparrow's not necessarily so sure where all the jumps are, then we have trouble. I also need to bear in mind that everywhere we go, we have different coloured wings. I have picked colours on my wings which should show up nicely on grass, but some of the places we go, the wings do not. And you know, that could be another factor. I don't know. It could be a factor, it could be not. I suspect it is a factor there, and I think that's possibly another reason why sometimes we're better than others. It's just something we've learned to work with. I'd like to call it flow. So with Sparrow, she needs flow. She needs a course to flow. I can't come to jerky stops. I cannot come to, I mean, if you see top handers, they come to a course, they go like this to get them to do it. I cannot do that because she says you've stopped. I cannot turn my back so that she's going away from me when I'm going this way. If I do that too soon, she goes, where are you? She's probably using my feet and my shoulders as much as anything to tell her where she needs to be and what she's doing. And I've just had to learn this and adapt to this. And we are getting there, and we're doing good. So it's just something to bear in mind. It might be something that you've come across in your training, and you might be going, why is my dog not able to do this? I do believe it is something to do with ETO and that vision issue, and the fact that they are just using your body so heavily to rely on where they need to turn. And I actually had a course at the weekend, and because I ran out of breath, I ended up doing the course without speaking at points because I just couldn't breathe. The interesting thing was, Sparrow started to run better. She actually took things better than when I was giving her words as well as my body cues, and that made me stop and think. Obviously not on the course, but afterwards. Because it made me think, if she was running that better and able to do that course without me saying anything, that tells me she is using my body motion a huge amount. And it makes me actually wonder if I spent more time as a motion-based hand with her and just cued her with my body, maybe she'd actually be a better agility dog. Interesting thought, something I may be working on the next few months and see what happens. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's made sense to you. Please share comments and ask questions, because this is a subject I'm really interested in, and you may have a question that we can do a video about. And if you've liked this, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram. And I hope to see you all again very, very soon.